Finance Agency Director William Pulte filed a second criminal referral against Cook, saying she misrepresented a third property, first calling it her second home, then declaring it a rental property. Pulte sending that referral to the Department of Justice as he urges the DOJ to look into the, quote, extremely troubling documents. Joining me now is the man himself, U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director and the chairman of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, William J. Pulte. Mr. Chairman, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. Why a second criminal referral?
Well, as you know, mortgage fraud is a huge priority of ours. It's been a huge priority, contrary to what Democrats and everybody wants to say, since March. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you commit mortgage fraud in this country, we're going to come after you. And in the case of Ms. Cook, it appears that she has committed blatant mortgage fraud. And we can't be having somebody like that in the Federal Reserve. So it will be up to the DOJ what they end up doing here, but things do not look very good for Ms. Cook.
Well, I mean, she's denying it, William. What do you want to say to her since she's denying it and she's actually suing President Trump?
I don't know if she is denying it, and that's what's very concerning, right? These documents are authentic. These documents match. People have to take responsibility for their actions. She's not coming out, to your point, and denying it.
Okay.
Instead, she's doing doublespeak with her attorneys and trying to play all kinds of games and attack us as the investigators. Look, we're impartial. We are the housing agency. We are focused on prosecuting mortgage fraud. If we see it, we have an obligation to do something about it, and we're not going to be deterred by politicians or criminal subjects' defense attorneys.
Actually, you make a great point, because even when the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, was with me last week, he said one thing we're not hearing is, I didn't do it.
That's correct, and that's what's very concerning. Instead, they're choosing to attack me and attack other great Americans who are just trying to protect the integrity of the market. But look, President Trump is focused on getting this housing market booming again. The last 4 years, has been terrible. Joe Biden and Jerome Powell did something terrible with interest rates. And I'll say one thing, which is that people talk about the independence of the Fed. The Fed has not been independent for the last 4 years, and you see that with Jerome Powell not holding Lisa Cook accountable. I mean, this is clearly, and what appears to be, blatant mortgage fraud, and Jerome Powell is silent. If anything, he's showing the lack of independence of the Fed, and it's by his own doing. So we couldn't get a new chairman soon enough, and hopefully that will solve a lot of these issues.
Yeah, and that's what I posed to Christine Lagarde last week. I said, I mean, isn't there an argument to be made that Powell already violated being independent when he came into the job, and 3 seconds in, he came up with all these climate change rules and, and DEI rules, and then cut rates right before a presidential election. But, Mr. Chairman, you're also highlighting mortgage and occupancy fraud overall and its impact on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You say that even the Federal Reserve calls occupancy fraud, quote, a contributor to the housing bubble. Is President Trump going to declare a national emergency on this?
Well, we'll see what the president ends up deciding to do. I saw Secretary Bessent's comments over the weekend, and I agree with it, which is we're looking at what the president has available to him. This president understands real estate. He understands housing better than anybody. We will fix this housing market. It's just a shame that we've got this massive headwind in front of us, which are these high interest rates. So, that's on the policy side of the interest rates. But on the legality side, that's equally concerning, because if you're not running things well, and, Secretary Bessent has also called for an internal review at the Fed. This is case number one as to the mortgage fraud. Why is Jerome Powell not out there? He should be out there saying, I condemn mortgage fraud, and if Lisa Cook did something, she should step down. And he may not have the authority technically to fire her, but he can certainly do what he did with these other two people who had trading problems, put his arm around her and say, look, you're destroying the credibility of the Fed. And unfortunately, I believe Jerome Powell is complicit in the destruction of the credibility of the Fed by his silence on this mortgage fraud matter.
Is there anything else you want to say about these other criminal referrals that we've spoken about? Adam Schiff, Letitia James?
No, I just want to say that, I want to stick with the referrals. I'll leave it to the DOJ to comment on the rest of the stuff. But, I would just encourage people, they've got to be accurate and timely with regard to their reporting. Ms. Cook had issues with not just the application, but also in reporting. She took out a second home, for example, and then 8 months later said that it was an investment property. With regard to Senator Schiff, I've been a little disappointed that, he's called some of the allegations false. Look, these are great people at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They didn't send the memo by accident. This was them seeing things that are very concerning to them. They put it forth. And look, it doesn't matter whether you're Senator Schiff or whether you're a famous person. If our team sees something, they're going to say something, and we're not going to be deterred or defamed by people who are wanting to cover up for what their actions were.
Yeah, meanwhile, you and I have been talking about the president's push to take part of these mortgage companies public. And you gave us your thoughts on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. These are going to be huge deals. Fannie Mae IPO is going to be a huge deal. I spoke with Treasury Secretary Bessent about it and asked him whether the government is going to sell about 5% of Fannie Mae. Here's what he said.
That's what the banks have advised so far. You know, a $30 billion deal would be one of the biggest deals, maybe the biggest deal in history. And these are very large companies, valuations in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So if we were to sell a 3 to 6% stake, it would work out to, you know, at least that. Every bank's going to be, all the big banks are going to be part of something that's this size, and you know, we're honing in on that. The president's been busy doing peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and he can multitask better than anyone I've ever seen.
Mr. Chairman, what else can you tell us about this? I know you've made the point that these two companies are incredibly critical to U.S. housing and to the nation overall.
Well, it's great that we finally have a president that, number one, knows that they exist, and number two, is looking to extract appropriately and legally value from them for the benefit of the U.S. taxpayers. So that is a huge departure from where we were. If you recall, some people tried to get the president, and he very wisely decided not to sell the companies years ago. He doesn't get much credit for it. He should get a lot of credit for it, because at the time they wanted him to sell these companies for $150 billion. Today, those companies, in my view, are worth to the United States government potentially $500 to $700 billion. I think that number is going to be going to trillion and potentially trillions one day. So this is another example of President Trump finding money where nobody finds it. They wanted to steal the company, as far as I'm concerned, years ago. He stopped that. And like one of my friends says, you know, everywhere President Trump looks, he finds money, and he's found money at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we're going to keep on making money for the benefit of Americans.
And so you're not going to sell all of the stake, right? The government will still hold a piece of Fannie Mae when the IPO happens?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. If the president decides to do it, which will be on his own time frame, you know, we're in no rush. The president holds all the cards. So he'll decide what to do and when to do it. But yeah, I think we're looking at about 5%. And I think it will be very oversubscribed. I mean, the president has a lot of popularity, so that will transfer very well into a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, largest IPO in history.
Yeah, I know. Every bank wants it. And so you're going to have lots of major banks selling it through their systems. Meanwhile, mortgage rates are holding steady. What, 6.5%, according to Freddie Mac. Secretary Bessent said that President Trump could declare a national housing emergency in the coming weeks, planning new measures to tackle rising costs and falling supply. The secretary also predicted those trends will reverse once the Fed finally cuts rates. Chairman, what are your thoughts on that? When will we actually see a break in mortgage rates?
Well, I think we'll finally see it when we finally see, and again, I'm talking policy, not legality and some of the other matters, but in terms of policy, when people start to really believe that these days of Jerome Powell holding the American people hostage is behind us, because then builders and everybody in real estate can start to plan for the future. The problem is right now, Maria, is there's so much uncertainty because of Jay Powell and what he's created with these interest rates that if you're a big builder, right? And look, I love Pulte Homes. I'm not with the business anymore, but Lennar or D.R. Horton or any of the big home builders, why would you want to go and invest in land right now when you have no visibility into why this guy is keeping interest rates at 4.5% and inflation's at 1.5%? These rates should be 3% lower. So if we could get those interest rates down, I think you're going to see a building boom. And I think that President Trump fundamentally understands it better than any president in history. So, but look, we got to reverse what happened these last 4 years to get the American dream back. Biden killed the American dream of home ownership, and we're resuscitating it. Every day we're resuscitating it, and we'll bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before.
And the president said that every 1 point in a move in rates represents, what, like $350 billion, right? I mean, part of the reason that he's pressuring Powell to cut rates is because it's so expensive to hold the debts that $37 trillion means we're paying more on the interest on that debt than we do on defense spending.
Correct. And then, like I said, you have multiplication of that, which is that builders and people aren't investing in the United States. So the president is absolutely correct. It's a trillion. It's a trillion plus plus. I think it's trillions and trillions of dollars worth of investment that Jay Powell is starving this economy from. Meanwhile, President Trump is getting this economy to boom after these last 4 years.
All right. Thank you for the update. Great to see you. William Pulte
You too.
joining us.